I feel that the lockdown restrictions were never proportionate to the risk that was posed to the vast majority of people in this country. And that's what I worry about. That I worry about where this is going to lead. I worry about talks about vaccine passports. I worry about the greater integration of technology into our lives, of nanotech and biotech. But I don't think we can no longer deny that COVID, a novel coronavirus, has given governments around the world an excuse and greater power to push forward with cultural, economic and sociological change, which has been in the planning for several years. And that's now what we have to be very concerned about is our freedoms.
Politicians are guided generally by what they are being told by the scientific and medical community, and they have imposed restrictions based on that advice. Now, we can quibble about some of the restrictions and say, well, they should have lapsed by now, or they were imposed too late. Fine, that is legitimate political debate. But I think, Beverley, Bev, I love you dearly, but I think you are misattributing motives here in a quite irresponsible way, if I'm honest. Nobody wants to see restrictions last longer than they need to. Everyone wants to get back to normal. Politicians, believe it or not, want to get back to normal.
In the last 50 years, what year do you think 2020 ranks in terms of the number of dead? 35. It is 35 in the last 50 years for the number of people who have died this year, even accounting for population change. So the idea that we are all locked in our houses now, it is illegal before that date in June to see people on our terms. Do you understand how far we've come in the last year in terms of the changes which have been made?
Okay, I do see what you're saying, but instinctively, I don't want to be locked in. But when I look around the world at the countries that have tried to freestyle it, and Brazil is a great example, Manaus in Brazil, for example, or the USA actually, they've had very high death figures.
International comparisons are very difficult, Jeremy, and they don't always cope with the scrutiny because there are all sorts of different issues at play. There is vitamin D proportion, there is the amount of existing immunity from other coronaviruses in Southeast Asian countries. There is the obesity problem that there is in Brazil. There is the personal hygiene, the living conditions of favelas in Brazil. We can't really make those comparisons like for like.
Well, Beverley doesn't like talking about international comparisons because they don't help her argument. She also doesn't like talking about the number of cases because, again, they're not helpful to her argument. The case rates in Europe are going up exponentially at the moment. Are you seriously suggesting that we should relax the travel restrictions and allow people to travel to Europe on holiday in May and June when we know that they will bring it back here and increase the rates exponentially? What you don't understand, Beverley, is that you don't actually have to have serious COVID to have long-term effects. And I hope Sarah can back this up because long-term COVID is so debilitating to people. They might not die from it, but they will be affected by it. And what you're saying is just let it rip. And we don't really care how many people get COVID as long as they don't die from it. That is so irresponsible.
Sarah wants to come in.